Welcome to week 2 of healthcare management. This week, we're going to focus on leadership. The first question we need to ask is, what is leadership? So I think it's interesting to note that if you Google the word leadership, you'll get about 479 million results. And there are almost as many definitions. But what is clear is that if you ask leaders what leadership is, they're going to give you many answers. But we should probably start with what leadership is not. So leadership has nothing to do with seniority or one's position in the hierarchy of a company. Leadership has nothing to do with titles. There's nothing to do with personal attributes. And you should also know leadership is not management. Leadership and management are not synonymous and are separate and distinct things. So when you ask leaders to define leadership, you're going to get a lot of different answers. And I don't want to get bogged down in all the different answers. But some of the leading people like Peter Drucker offer effective leadership is not about making speeches or being liked. Leadership is defined by results, not attributes. Bill Gates, as we look into the next century, leaders will be those who empower others. And it goes on from there. So you can read through these various quotes from people who have proven themselves to be effective leaders. And you're going to see that there are many differences, but there's also some wisdom in each of the quotes. But what we have to keep in mind is that when we're talking about leadership, that there are many theories and ideas about what is effective leadership. And people spend many years studying leadership, and we're spending 1 week on it in healthcare management. So we're not going to become experts on the different theories and the different styles of leadership. So we'll give a high-level introduction, and then we're going to look at some particular areas of leadership that I think will be most helpful to you. So when we talk about leadership theories, there's a history of studying leadership, and it dates back to Aristotle about what is leadership and what makes somebody a good leader. And starting with the great man theory, looking at attributes of people, this idea of contingency, situational leadership theories, which I happen to be a big fan of. Situational leadership theory basically says that we need to, as leaders, vary our approach based on the situation, based on the skills of the people who work for us, based on the situation that we put them in. And we need to be sensitive to all those things. But there's other theories about transformational leadership. There's theories about being a servant leader. There's theories about the role emotional intelligence plays, which we will look at in our work this week. But the bottom line in all this is that it's easy to get swamped and overwhelmed with this whole concept when we're really just taking a very high level look at it. So what I thought would be helpful, so in addition to that, there's this idea of leadership styles and what styles should we take. And so, should we be visionary? Should we be coaching? Should we be affiliative, democratic, pace setting, or commanding? And each of these styles could work in a particular situation depending upon who our subordinates are. But we're not going to focus on that in this particular 1 week of leadership. What I thought would be good is to listen to 3 videos that I posted, videos/podcasts that were done by the Harvard Business School. One talks about the crucial skills for tomorrow's leaders. And so these are very brief snippets from a bunch of people who've studied leadership and talk about the crucial skills that you'll need to be an effective leader going forward. And then the next video/podcast is the role of tomorrow's leaders. So this talks, again, interviewing people who studied leadership, people who are in leadership roles, the role that leaders will play going forward. And I think that provides some good insight. And then the third one that I want you to look at is, again, done by the Harvard Business School, brief video about the biggest mistakes leaders can make. So I think when we look at the crucial skills, the role of tomorrow's leaders, and the biggest mistakes that leaders can make, you can walk away from this 1 week with some pretty concrete ideas about what leadership is and what makes it effective and what traps and mistakes that leaders could fall into. So that is That I think would be very important to your takeaways from this week. The other thing I think that's important, and I'm a big fan of this whole emotional intelligence study. So emotional intelligence is this idea that, there are 5 areas: self-awareness, self-management, energizers, social awareness, and relationship management. So I've asked you to do some reading on that, and I think you'll find that this is extremely insightful in terms of what makes somebody effective, both as a contributor and as a leader in an organization. So one of the things that the data seems to have established is that emotional intelligence is actually more valuable in the workplace than IQ is. And it's not to say that IQ is not important, but people who have emotional intelligence actually perform at a higher level. And when you ask employers the things that they value, remaining calm under pressure, resolving conflict effectively, empathetic to their colleagues, lead by example, put more consideration into business considerations. These are all emotional intelligence. So if you want to understand what emotional intelligence is, and if you need to work on it, you need to work on it, on an individual basis. And that will carry you a long way in terms of your ability to be an effective contributor and leader in organizations. So the data also indicates that people with high levels of emotional intelligence are among the top performers in organizations. They make more money, and that EQ, as it's called, emotional intelligence, is responsible for 58% of your job performance. So these things about, are you self-aware? Do you manage yourself in terms of positive thinking, being assertive, problem solving? Do you manage relationships well? Are you socially aware? These things are more important than any other thing you're going to do in the workplace in terms of your overall performance, which you get paid, and in your contribution. So then in chapter 2 is offers a lot of ideas at a very high level, but it's a survey chapter, so we're not going to walk away from this becoming experts on leadership, but we'll get some good ideas around some things that are important. So one of the questions that the chapter starts with: are leaders and managers the same people? And so we know the answer to that is no. Okay, we know that there are times that leaders are good leaders are not good managers. The times that good managers are not good leaders, and their roles are really different. Okay, so I might be put in a position where I'm both a leader and a manager, but I have to recognize that those roles are different. The other thing I have to recognize is that in the healthcare arena, that the challenges can be more challenging and are certainly unique, and I have to be cognizant when I think about having high emotional intelligence, having the ability to use situational adaptive leadership style. I have to recognize that in the healthcare setting, what am I dealing with? I'm dealing with people who have a certain perspective on organizations and on being told what to do, and I have to be savvy about that. And so that's so healthcare in and of itself creates certain challenges and opportunities that we need to be aware of. So when we talk about leadership, we talk about a lot of times we represent the organization externally. Could be with the media, government, partners, board of directors, and so forth, regulatory authorities. Management tends to focus on the internal stakeholders, running the organization, making sure things are efficient and effective, where the leaders are focused on the external. So that's one difference, not the only difference, because leadership's about people, and management is often about managing processes and things. So some of the competencies we need: we have to be forward thinking, we have to be able to have a vision and set direction for the organization. We have to understand people and know how to motivate them. We have to be able to keep the entity on course, right? So when it needs a corrective behavior, we need to step in and do that. We need to be able to be a spokesperson outside the organization. And we also need to think about the future and set the strategies so that we can transform the organization. So all of these things are important. And while not everyone should be a leader, anybody who desires to be a leader can certainly develop the skills to be a leader. Okay, so there's no thinking that you're a born leader or you're not a leader. Okay, leadership skills are learnable, they're coachable, they're teachable, and so if you desire to be a leader and you want to do the things that leaders need to do, then you certainly can fill that void. So it does take on additional responsibilities, additional work, additional headaches, but some people find it extremely rewarding and love that challenge and love that opportunity. And other people decide that they want to focus on other things in their careers. So there's no right or wrong answer here. So there is a long history of leadership studies, as I've mentioned at the outset. And, so there's a lot of theories that are introduced in chapter 2, which you'll have a chance to look through and read. And you'll be tested on when it comes to, the graded assignment number 4. And most recently, this idea of self-actualized leadership theories, emotional intelligence, authentic leadership, servant leadership, spirituality leadership. We couldn't possibly cover all these elements in a 1-week class, a 1-week session. But I want you to, I have put some materials on emotional intelligence, and I think this is something that I hope you walk away with a solid understanding of after this week. And then when it comes to leadership styles, there's a spectrum around the styles that leaders can take. And Blake Moulton put together a managerial grid some time ago. And people have really built on that. And there's this idea that we can take different styles: coaching, coercive, participative, pace setting. And we have to be adaptive, right? That our style should be adaptive to the situation and the people that we are leading in the organization and for the particular situation. And then we need certain competencies. And I think a lot of this stems out of the emotional intelligence, self-development, self-understanding, interpersonal, and so forth. Okay, so then chapter 2 talks about leadership domains and competencies. And there's a lot of information here that I think you'll find interesting and informative to the discussion. So, the appropriate way a leader acts, and again, if you go back to those videos that I've posted, I think you'll get a lot out of those videos. Appropriate, professionalism, trust is a big thing for leaders. If you're not trusted, it's almost impossible to be a leader. So trust is a function of, I trust you professionally, I trust you personally, and being an effective communicator is often helpful. Sometimes being a risk taker, being able to own mistakes, being able to protect people. There are so many things, and to try to summarize it in a slide or 2 is not practical. So, but I think again, it's the beginning point of your recognizing things about leadership. And then certainly when it comes to healthcare, there's many challenges in healthcare that we don't face in other industries. So there's the external regulation, there's the need for safety and quality within the operation, and there's a different set of professionals that we're dealing with that not every profession deals with. So we need to recognize that there's many dynamics that we have to deal with in healthcare, and the leader has to be aware of all those things and be able to deal with them all effectively. So the challenges are big, but the rewards are also big in healthcare. So we have to deal with laws and regulations, physicians, technology, culture of safety, etc. And then ethics is certainly a big thing when it comes to leadership. When we talk about ethical responsibility, we're talking about going above and beyond what the law requires. So the law may require me to treat somebody who's in a situation where they may die, but what's my ethical responsibilities when it comes to providing the same care I provide to an indigent patient as I would to somebody who's able to pay for my services? And that's where the ethical issues come in. And then, with technology and bioethics, we're going to face a lot of other challenging things that we're going to have to deal with. So there is a code of ethics in every profession. So whether you become a pharmacist, a nurse, a physician, or any profession, you're going to find that there are codes of ethics that will help us to determine the right things to do. And we really have to make sure that we keep our ethical compass pointed north at all times.